I call the Honourable Member Jackie Dean.
Yes, thank you, Mr Speaker. It gives me great pleasure to rise to speak in the third reading of the Trademarks Amendment Bill and the Copyright Amendment Bill. And I just want to pick up on a couple of points which have been raised by some previous speakers in this debate, and it relates to the work that the Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade Committee did on this bill when it was first sent to our committee. And the points have been made by two Labour members around some aspects of the bill being brought into being through Order in Council. And we're referring specifically to Clause 2.2, which provides for 10 of those clauses, very important clauses in the bill, to be brought about by Order in Council. And the Honourable Marianne Street picked up on the point that the committee in its commentary urged the Ministry of Economic Development to implement all aspects of the legislation expeditiously, and the member used that as a bit of an excuse or an opportunity to try and raise a rather weak attack on the government in terms of timeliness. Can I suggest that member has rather missed the point? Because actually, I recall very well the discussion in the Select Committee around those 10 clauses in the bill being around such matters as the appointment and powers of enforcement officers and customs officers. And I recall very clearly in the Select Committee, the member may not and her colleague may not, but I recall very clearly that we had a long and careful discussion about the powers of customs officers. And it did seem to the members of the committee present, and I know that my colleagues in the House recall it very well, that was the focus of our discussion, because I suggest to the members opposite that the powers of enforcement officers and customs officers is of critical importance, and I can suggest to that member that we did deal with that issue very thoroughly. And also, furthermore to that, we were concerned that the bill as it was sent to our committee, the explanatory note, Mr Speaker, didn't adequately explain just why it was that those 10 clauses were to be enacted through Order in Council and not be in the body of the legislation. So can I suggest to the members opposite that that was the reason why we had concern for that part of the bill, not any aspect of when the bill might be read in the Parliament? Can I also note that this is a busy government. This is a busy government who has got an awful lot of work on its plate, picking up after 9 years of neglect by the previous Labour government. And so it has been a long body of work that this government has undertaken. I also want to pick up on the Honourable Pete Hodson, who spent a lot of grumpy, I would have to say, time in his third reading speech asking a number of questions and table thumping about why he was not going to get the answers. Can I also suggest to that member that he had a lot of opportunity, both during the Select Committee consideration of this bill and also the Committee of the Whole stage of this bill, to indeed ask those questions. And if it has only just now occurred to that member to ask those questions, can I suggest he might have taken a little bit more care about the bill on its way through our very good Select Committee process. So having said those couple of points, I also am very pleased to see that this government is putting through this piece of legislation in time for the Rugby World Cup. The eyes of the world are upon us now. It is most important that we have the legislation in place now to cope with the challenges that the Rugby World Cup are bringing upon us. And so the Trademarks Amendment Bill and the Copyright Amendment Bill will make life easier for the New Zealand Customs, for New Zealand business, while cracking down on people who import and sell counterfeit goods. I think, as the excellent Honourable Maurice Williamson noted, it's all very well to bring in a pair of cheap sneakers with some brand name on it which ultimately fall apart within a few days, but that doesn't do the New Zealand economy any good and certainly does not do the good name of the company any good. This legislation overcomes that. It also just gives effect to a number of treaties for the New Zealand government, the Madrid Protocol, Nice Agreement and the Singapore Treaty. I'm not going to use the time of this House to rehearse the impact of those treaties. They have been well canvassed in the House. And so with those few words, Mr Speaker, I commend the bill to the House.
I call the honourable member